Good afternoon, everybody. And today we're going to talk about the distributive property in algebra. Before we begin with the distributive property, I'd like to start with reviewing a couple of the other properties that are very important to us. First of all, many of you have already learned the associative property of addition. The associative property of addition says that if you have a number A plus a number B grouped together and then added to C, that is the same thing as A plus B plus C grouped together. Okay? So, it doesn't matter who you group together, you will always get the same solution. For example, if I have 2 plus 3 plus 2, let's actually make that 5. That's going to be the same as 2 plus 3 plus 5. The reason that we use parentheses around them is we're telling someone the order of operations that we want done. So let's see if this is a true statement. Well, 2 plus 3 is 5. 5 plus 5 is equal to 10. 3 plus 5 over here is 8. 8 plus 2 is equal to 10. So the addition property of the associative property of addition works. So let's look at the associative property of multiplication. The associative property of multiplication says that if you have A times B and then you multiply that by C, that's the same as multiplying B and C first and then multiplying it by A. So let's do this one. How about 2 times 3? Let me write it like this so you're not confused. How about 2 times 3 times 3? And that's the same as going to be 2 times 3 times 3. Okay? So let's look at this. What's 2 times 3? That's 6. 6 times 3 is 18. 3 times 3 is 9 times 2 is 18. So it doesn't matter that what order that we do them to or how we group them. Okay? This will only work through addition and multiplication and not in subtraction and division. And the reason that it doesn't work in subtraction and division is those two operations, order does matter how we do them. For example, if I have a negative 3 plus 2, okay, or let's make it even easier than that. 5 minus 2 is equal to 3, right? But 2 minus 5 is equal to negative 3. So order does matter. Okay, so let's review one more property before we get into the distributive property. And the commutative property of addition says that if you have A plus B, that's the same thing as B plus A. Okay? And the one I like to use all the time is 2 plus 3 is equal to 5, and 3 plus 2 is also equal to 5. So it doesn't matter whether I move the 2 and the 3 around. I still get the same sum. Same thing with with multiplication. The commutative property of multiplication says that if I have A times B, that's the same as B times A. Again, I'm going to stick with the 2 and the 3. 2 times 3 is equal to 6, and 3 times 2 is also equal to 6. So again, commutative property of addition, commutative property of multiplication. We don't have a commutative property for the other two operations because, again, order matters. Okay? That leads us to our lesson today, which is the distributive property. The distributive property is probably the number one used property in algebra today. What the distributive property says, that is, if you have A times B plus C, that's the same as you multiply a times b and then a times c. So you get a times b plus a times c. This works also with subtraction. A times b minus c. The distributive property says that I'm going to distribute the a to both of the inside terms. So we get a times b minus a times c. Okay? So now let's do some problems to demonstrate this. Okay? So let's do an algebraic expression. Let's start off with that. 3 times x plus 7. So we're going to do the distributive property. We're going to multiply 3 times x and then 3 times 7. Okay? 3 times x is going to give me 3x. 3 times positive 7 is going to give me positive 21. So the distributive property for this operation would give me 3x plus 21. Let's do another one. How about 4 times 2x minus 3? Okay, we're going to do the distributive property. 4 times 2x gives me 8x. 4 times negative 3 gives me negative 12. So we now have 8x minus 12. Now, you could be saying, Mr. Wyatt, when would I use this in my everyday life? Actually, the distributive property is very easy for us when we're doing multiplication. For example, let's multiply 3 times 97. And I'm going to show you how to do this without having to do the long multiplication. We can do this as a breakdown of 3 times 90 plus 3 times 7. Well, 3 times 90 is 270, and 3 times 7 is 21, and if I add these together, I'll get 291. So we know that 3 times 97 is 291. Let's do another one. How about 4 times 51? Well, we can rewrite this as 4 times 50 plus 4 times 1. Well, 4 times 50 is 200 plus 4 times 1 is 4. So we know that this is going to be 204. Okay? Hopefully you understand this, because I'm going to move on to our next problem. Okay? So now let's pull this in to an algebraic problem with an area of a rectangle. Let's look at, we want to find the area of a rectangle whose side lengths are 2x plus 5 and the width is 7. Okay? So we know that the area of a rectangle is your length times your width. Well, here in our particular case here, our length or our width is 7 times 2x plus 5. So we have our 7 and our 2x plus 5, and we're going to multiply this through the distributive property. So 7 times 2x is going to give me 14x, and then 7 times positive 5 gives me 35. And so for the area of our rectangle is 14x plus 35 units squared. Okay? Let's do another problem. Let's look at the distributive property of 3 times 90 plus 60. Okay? So we can do this two ways. We can go ahead and add the 90 plus 60, and we will have 3 times 150. And then we can multiply 3 times 150, and that's going to give me 450. We can also do this another way by doing 3 times 90 plus 3 times 60. So we're using the distributive property, okay? Well, 3 times 90 is 270, plus 3 times 60 is 180. We add these two together, and we get 450. It doesn't matter which way you do the distributive property, it will work every time. So let's look at a word problem with the distributive property, okay? You and 2 of your friends are going on a camping trip. You each buy a backpack that costs $90 and a sleeping bag that costs $60. What is the total cost of the camping trip? Well, you and 2 of your friends, so there are 3 total people in our group, and each one of you needs to buy 1 sleeping bag and 1 backpack, okay? So each one of you is going to have to buy your backpack plus your sleeping bag, okay? And so we're going to do this problem, which just so happens to be just like the problem that we did before. You can actually break it down to do it either 2 ways. Go ahead and add 90 and 60, and you can do 3 times 150, which is the distributive property, which is going to go ahead and give you $450. Or you can do the distributive property another way by going 3 times 90, which to 170, and then 3 times your sleeping bag, which is 180. Add those together, and the total cost is 450. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video on the distributive property. I thank you very much for listening. Have an amazing day, and take care of yourself.